So now let's look at how we can support conversations around performance management and being able to evaluate and develop a person's performance. Firstly, we need to start off with mapping what are our expectations of a person's current performance. So what are the kind of behaviors that are important to us as an organization that are an exhibition of a person's performance? Because it is not every task which can be measured in very easy to read data points. Let me take an example of two different roles. Let's say you have a salesperson and they have a certain target of being able to sell a certain number of products per month. Now, this is an easy target that you can evaluate. You know, has this person met their target? Have they overachieved their target? Or whether they have not yet met their target. If this person has overachieved their target, you can also easily measure their degree of overachievement. And therefore, you will find that in many such organizations which have sales teams or in departments where these performance metrics are very measurable, it is easy to create very transparent and easy to read incentive plans that reward people basis their level of achievement or overachievement. Now, let's compare this with some roles where these things are not that easy to measure. Let's take your own role, for example. In an HR person's role, maybe your actual metric, your actual KRAs are about the quality of your conversation with employees. Maybe you are being measured by how comfortable your employees feel within the organization. Maybe you are being measured on the overall cultural alignment. Now, how do I firstly measure this? And then, even if I've measured this, how do I create this differentiation that this impact was made by person A in the team versus the impact being made by person B in the team? So this kind of mapping of what constitutes performance, and similarly this kind of mapping of what constitutes potential in order to have this person be ready for the next role is very, very critical as a base for being able to have a basic evaluation of a person's performance. Usually, this will stem from conversations about the organization's larger goals and visions, and you will need to break this down into the kind of values that an organization, prioritizes, and these values can then be distilled into observable and measurable behaviors that then you can evaluate the person on. Once these behaviors have been listed down, what you should do is run comprehensive feedbacks where feedback is coming not just from the person's current manager or from the past manager, but also from the people that they have worked with, so their peers, or the people that they themselves have been managing or collaborating with. So you get a comprehensive feedback. You make sure that this feedback is shared periodically with the employee along with a link to their goals and a link to their the measurement of what were their KPIs, and then you are able to pull this thing together and share with them feedback on what they're doing well and what they need to improve on, and therefore giving them clear lead time in order to be able to improve their performance and really be able to strive towards becoming a top performer within your organization. What you will find is when you deal with feedbacks from multiple sources, you will have to also run governance models, and you will find that different organizations have different philosophies. There are certain organizations that believe in fitting their employees into a bell curve. So you believe that there should be a certain number of people that you think are top performers. Then you decide that I'll have the bulk of my population as an average performer, and then I would also like to isolate a few people who are my underperformers. These are various curves that you can force your managers to fit their people into. You could also choose to not enforce a curve, but rather have people rate their workforce as per what they believe is a true reflection of their capabilities. You might also realize that depending upon the nature of work a team is doing, there are different distributions of capabilities within the team. So teams that are performing really complex and high stakes work might have a larger distribution of top performers versus a team which is doing very mundane, repetitive, and automated tasks. So these are the kind of governances that you will run, and then ultimately you will possibly get into negotiations with the managers in order to make sure that you have a distribution of people within your organization that is not biased by the personality of the person who's evaluating this person. So let me give you an example. There are some of us who have a fairly generous nature when it comes to accepting misses or accepting faults. And there are some of us who are extremely strict about it, and we believe in 100% compliance. Depending on your luck, you might be stuck with a manager who will hold you responsible for every miss. And therefore, when sharing feedback, they will tend to pass judgment on every single instance, versus a manager who tends to kind of overlook it and say, it's okay, as long as a person is fairly good at their work, I think they're a top performer. Now, I'm not saying what kind of manager is better, but what you will ultimately have is you will have some ratings from a very, very generous manager versus some ratings from a manager who is very strict and very demanding. You should be able to read this bias and then be able to bring these ratings together so that teams of these different personality types do not suffer. And there are no needless preferences being given to a team of a very generous manager. So these kind of biases can be thrown up by data, by pulling in data of a current performance, but also seeing how it varies from your historic performance. And the kind of anomaly detection or the kind of trend analysis that you can do for it can be really useful for HR to have these conversations with the people who are responsible for evaluating and developing your workforce.